We're now sending over 20 million cold emails a month through my company ScaleMail across all of our users. And what I've learned from obsessively testing and monitoring everything is that how most people send cold emails today is just fundamentally broke. They're writing copy, they're building lists, setting up campaigns, and their emails still are not making it to the inbox. So in this video, I'm going to break down the exact infrastructure setup I've seen perform best across all of our campaigns and explain how we're able to send millions of cold emails each month, avoid spam, and generate a ton of leads. Before we get into the specifics, I do want to set the stage. So let's dive in. Most people watching this are focused on the wrong thing. They're going to think I'm going to spend all this time building fancy AI lead lists or setting up Clay workflows, writing AI generated copy. And look, that stuff does matter. I'm not saying it doesn't, but here's the problem. They're going to plug all of that in their email tool, blast out a sequence, and then they're going to wonder why they're getting 0 replies. And the reason is that none of that matters if the emails aren't delivered to the primary inbox. You could have the best copy in the world, most dialed in list, and if your infrastructure is wrong, nobody's even going to see it. The real work with cold email happens before you start writing a single word of that copy. It happens when you set up the infrastructure, the domains, the inboxes, your warm-up schedule, the sending configuration from each type of inbox. If that stuff isn't nailed, then the emails aren't going to get seen. They're going to go straight to spam, or they're going to get filtered out before they even leave your outbox. And yes, that does happen. You won't get a notification that just says, hey, your email went to spam. It's just going to quietly disappear, go out in the ether, and you're not going to hear anything. It's going to be crickets. I know there's a lot of conflicting information out there about how to set up your cold email infrastructure today. There's a lot of different opinions. So I'm going to give you what I think at least is working best for us. And you can take what you will from this. This is data from sending tens of millions of cold emails every single month. So it's not like we haven't seen enough data on our end, but I know that we're going to say some things that others disagree with. The first thing to get right is which email providers or ESPs you're going to be using. There's really two big ones, right? Google and Microsoft are the giants. They control 98% of the inbox market. And I would say month to month, you might see one outperforming the other. Sometimes it's Google, sometimes it's Microsoft. And what I've seen over and over is people will, read into those results a lot and go all in on one provider. Now, the problem is they're putting all their eggs in one basket. They'll set up all these Google Workspace accounts or all these Microsoft accounts. And for a while, it's going to work fine. But then one month, Google rolls out an update. Maybe they're cracking down on cold email. Maybe the next month, it's Outlook doing the same thing. And when that happens, if you're 100% on one provider, you're really exposed. So I'll give you an idea. A couple months ago, Microsoft was tightening up their outbound filters. And so anyone that was running 100% Outlook accounts saw a real impact on the results. They're going to roll out eventually an inevitable update that might loosen things up a bit. But if you're really concentrated, then you're going to feel that breakdown of results for weeks, if not months. And if you're an agency or you're trying to hit a specific number for your team, that can mean the difference between, a really good quarter and a really bad one. So at least at ScaleMail and my agency Beanstalk, we go with a relatively simple model. We split everything 50-50 as far as sending volume goes between Google and Microsoft. If we're adding SMTP mailboxes or just private mailboxes that are not Google and Microsoft, then we'll probably throw those in at like a 33 ratio, or maybe even just 10 or 20% just to have some cheap volume added to the mix. The nice thing with this 50-50 strategy is one side's getting strict, if Microsoft's cracking down, the other side tends to keep going. So you're not necessarily all in on just one type of inbox, and your whole operation isn't at risk. You can work on fixing or shoring up the broken side while the other side is still generating a pipeline for you. Think of it as basic risk management, and you'd think this would be common, but you'd be surprised. I see a lot of people sort of like lemmings running from one ESP over to the other, canceling all their Google inboxes and running to Microsoft, and then 3 months later, they're doing the same thing. It's just really an expensive way to go about it. I would just spread your bets from the beginning, and then you don't have to necessarily revisit your infrastructure every 2 months. This is something that's very easy to implement on ScaleMail. We wanted to make it easy to implement diversification, so we have a bunch of different options depending on what you need. But the point is the infrastructure is already built out and maintained for you, so you can just focus on sending. So check the first link below and you'll be able to see how easy it is to set up with these different types of mailboxes. So testing variants. You can have perfect infrastructure, great domains, warm up, everything dialed in. But if the copy's triggering filters, then again, it won't matter. Here's a good example of how fast things are changing. If you send from Microsoft inboxes, for example, we've noticed that they, at least, or we surmise that they now have an outbound AI filter that's scanning your emails before they even leave your account, especially if you're sending Microsoft to Microsoft. Now, when you send Microsoft to Microsoft, you have two filters that you have to think about. First, there's the outbound filter on your side that's checking your email before before it leaves. And then you've got the inbound filter on the recipient side, checking it again when it arrives. And if you think about the pattern matching that the ESPs are doing to see who's sending cold outbound at scale, you're really giving them maximum visibility into your campaigns. They can see both sides, they can see all of the engagement rate data, and they're just much faster, it seems, to pinpoint who's doing cold email at scale. And those domains tend to suffer a lot faster than if you're doing a lot of cross-pollination, sending Google to Outlook or Outlook to Google. In my opinion, the trade-off just isn't worth it. Whatever small deliverability benefit you might get from matching, and there is one, you're going to pay for it with faster infrastructure degradation, which means you're going to have to replace these inboxes much more often, and that does add up. I know a lot of platforms like a Smart Lead or Email Bison or Instantly have an ESP matching setting somewhere. Just turn it off, and if you're setting up a new campaign, make sure it stays off, and just let the emails route naturally and randomly instead of forcing the match. Once your infrastructure is up and running, the work isn't over. The next part is one of the more overlooked pieces in cold email, not at the beginning, but on an ongoing basis. And this is email warm-up. Most people know by now that they've got to warm up new inboxes on fresh domains for 2 to 4 weeks. But once they see those deliverability scores starting to look good, they think, great, we're ready. They'll turn off warm up and they just start sending cold emails. And what will happen is they'll see great results for a little bit, but then deliverability is going to fall off a cliff maybe a month or two later, and they don't really get why. The fix has generally been to run warm up nonstop and keep it running for as long as the inbox is active. But not only that, if you think about the purpose of warm-up, which is to look like a good sender that's getting good engagement from recipients on a regular basis, if you're sending one warm-up email to one cold email on a 1-to-1 ratio basis, you're going to have a lot of negative signal associated with these inboxes and these domains. So what we do is we run a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 warm-up emails for every 1 cold email. And you keep that running for as long as the inbox is going. We've seen this keep domains healthy a lot longer, even at the volume we're sending. And it makes logical sense, right? We're really trying to bury at a 2-to-1 ratio those negative engagement signals with the positive replies, opens, emails getting moved to the primary inbox, all the positive signals that warm-up creates. We've basically got now 66%, I guess, of 100% being that positive signal. And so, yes, you're going to have those standard, negative responses that you get with cold email, but hopefully we've counterbalanced that with an approach like this. Look, it's still unsolicited email, and some people are going to mark this as spam, or you're going to get some bounces even if you're validating your lists. So it's going to chip away at your sender reputation over time, even if you're doing almost everything perfectly. But that 2-to-1 ratio is going to keep you online with the least possible downtime for a lot longer than if you went some other route or sent more aggressively. So it might seem like you're wasting a lot of that capacity on these inboxes by doing that, but trust me, you want to do this method where you're loading up on the email warm-up. All right, let's talk about resting and rotating. The idea here is basically doubling up your coverage as far as how many inboxes or how many domains that you've got associated with your campaigns. And then you're going to split your inboxes into 2 groups. Group A is actively sending cold emails plus warm-up. And then you got Group B that are basically on the bench. They're just doing warm-up. It's another set of inboxes at a 1-to-1 ratio that's not sending cold sends at all. It's just resting and rebuilding reputation. After a set period, maybe 2 to 4 weeks, you're going to swap them out. So Group B is going to start sending cold. Group A is going to go to the bench to rest. And you're just going to keep rotating like that on a regular schedule. And what we've seen is that if you maintain a schedule like this, you can really elongate the lifespan of your cold email domains and make that investment as worthwhile as it can be. If you're just sending as hard as you can from one set of inboxes, they're going to degrade. And again, offer dependent, but in some cases, especially in commoditized or competitive offerings, you can see them degrade quite quickly. And if you're not doing this resting and recuperation at any point, you're going to have to start investing in new infrastructure every 2, 3, 4 months, which really eats into your margin. If you can double how long your infrastructure lasts just by investing more upfront, you're going to find that in many cases, it's not just double. You might triple or quadruple or even go beyond and 5 or 6x the lifespan for your inboxes and save a ton of money in the long run. From sending over 20 million emails a month across our user base, I have a pretty unique inside look into how cold email is actually performing right now and what you can realistically expect from the channel today. I need to talk about this because I see a lot of people get discouraged and quit because they're chasing numbers that don't exist anymore. If you're watching YouTube videos from 2013, 2015, 2017, and people are talking about 20% reply rates and mail merge and GMAS, that was a completely different era. The landscape has changed, and so your expectations for the channel really need to change with it. So I'm going to go through what's actually realistic today with proper infrastructure and all of the techniques that we already went through. I would say 1 to 2% reply rate for most B2B campaigns is okay, and especially at scale. If you're in that range, the channel is working. That doesn't mean there isn't improvement to be had. You can definitely look at your targeting, your copy, and see what you can tighten up, but don't think that something's automatically wrong if you're running a cold email campaign you see 1.9%, especially at scale. Now, below 1%, I would start digging in and figuring out what's going on. You might want to start testing aggressively, test more variants, maybe see what some new infrastructure does. Does that move the needle at all? Something in the setup might need attention or could be optimized. On the flip side, anything above 2 to 3% is good. If you're seeing those numbers, you found something that works and you just need to focus on scaling it. And that might mean just pulling more leads, pulling leads off variants that weren't working and putting them on whatever's running 2, 3% or higher. You want to just feed that beast until you start to see degradation in results. One way to think about getting outsized results is really simple. How much outbound is this target recipient person already getting? So you'll find that some industries and job titles are just getting hammered with cold email and cold calls. SaaS founders, marketing directors, e-com brand owners, right? Anything tech adjacent, because tech business owners and their vendors tend to be a little bit more wise on the options available with cold outbound. And so you'll see that a lot of these people are getting 30 to 40 cold emails a day, and they start to develop a certain level of blindness to it. Your email's just one of a dozen they've gotten in the last hour. A lot of them are going to get deleted without being read, even if you do everything right. So you're fighting for maybe even 0.5% to 1% reply rate, even with great infrastructure, just because of how competitive the space is. On the other side, there are industries and niches where the people you're targeting barely get any outbound at all. Maybe they get a couple cold emails a week instead of a couple dozen a day. And when you show up in their inbox, they actually read it. Now, the reply rates in these kinds of verticals can be dramatically higher with the exact same infrastructure and the exact same level of effort. Now, you've got to figure out who is and is not getting bombarded. And it's not as simple as target local businesses or go after enterprise. It's understanding how much outbound a specific audience is already receiving, or at least trying to infer it. Some niches you think are quiet are already getting hammered by private equity firms looking to buy them out, or recruiters, or something else. So you want to really think about this, or you could use AI to try to uncover this. But what I found is that if you go for the people who are likely only getting 1 or 2 or 3 cold emails a day, you're really going to see the payoff. And it tends to be these weird businesses that in many cases in the past, I've doubted whether they would even get results because I just had never heard of the industry or niche before. But I've always been surprised at how well those industries and campaigns tend to perform compared to stuff that I might know a lot better, like selling a SaaS product. If you don't want to deal with setting up everything that I've talked about in this video yourself, you can click the first link in the description. At least on the infrastructure piece, you can check out Scaled Mail, and we're going to take care of all of that for you. We're going to build and maintain your entire infrastructure so you can just focus on sending. If your goal is having the highest chances of getting your cold emails in front of your leads and then generating the best results from those campaigns, you're going to want to try out Scaled Mail infrastructure. And if you need help with actually learning how to do cold outbound at scale, because there's a lot that goes into it besides your infrastructure, that copy, how to create great lists, how to customize your outbound with AI, then you're going to want to check out our school group that's linked below, where we have a full cold email course that'll teach you A to Z how to get started with cold email outbound as a channel.